I certainly don't have a problem as someone who comes from the South if I'm compared with Africans. And on that, I completely agree with Mr. Annamalai's take on the point. It's surprising that as part of this election, some deep-seated differences on the basics, on the fundamentals of who we are as a society and as a country have come to fore. It just so happens that it represents a broader problem, an even more disturbing issue, where the ones who wish to come to power see Bharat as some kind of incongruent nation, which has been synthetically created by the colonizer, but for whose munificence we wouldn't be a single nation. That is the problem. And I'm connecting two different statements here. One is Mr. Cherian's interview, and the second is Mr. Pitroda's statement, both of them put together. The problem is then you assume that but for a nation state, or let's say a government wielding some kind of stick, Bharatiyas among themselves are incapable of acting and living together as a country. That challenges the very notion that we are a civilization state, that we have always been one civilizationally, and that we may have exist as political units in different forms, as separate political units, but civilizationally we have been one, has been the central message that I would have expected both political parties to be on the same page on. It's surprising that as part of this election, some deep-seated differences on the basics, on the fundamentals of who we are as a society and as a country have come to fore, which is what is even more problematic. See, at the end of the day, I'm perfectly comfortable accepting the outcome of a democratic election, one way or the other. That's something that for people to decide as to who they want in power. But at what cost, at what price will this policy be followed, where one of the mainstream parties, which is vying for power at the center, believes in culturally balkanizing the country in order to secure power? And its leading voices, both on the intellectual front and on the public front, make the very same statement but in two different forms. That is what is seriously problematic according to me. The opposition is resorting to dangerous, deadly scorched earth policy, whose implications and consequences are bound to go beyond 2024. I don't think this game is being played purely for the sake of succeeding at elections in 2024. I see this as laying the foundation for following a potentially balkanizing strategy as far as Bharat is concerned, well beyond 2024. And these are the foundations which are being laid for 2029 and thereafter. So I am of the clear view that an anti-Bharat clique or cabal has chosen to occupy the policy circles and the advisory circles of those in opposition, because of which we get to hear all sorts of, let's say, separatist statements being issued in the name of a vision for Bharat. All these days, this separatist dialogue and the separatist tone and tenor was emanating from certain academic circles. For it to be mainstreamed and for it to become part of somebody's election manifesto and politicking at the time of elections is deeply troublesome. I say this as someone who's been an equal critique of both parties on this front, that reservations of groups which have suffered certain forms of behavior, I would say, must remain in the statute book for a while. But if Dr. Ambedkar is going to be the touchstone for everything, he's also taken a position on the Islamist problem, and he's also taken a position with respect to the longevity of reservations and who all can actually claim to be the beneficiaries of the reservations. So if people want to talk about reservations, we have to ask ourselves this honest question: do we see a point where we can actually have a calm conversation, an honest conversation, and who can be extended this particular benefit? When is the cutoff date? What about the creamy layer issue? That would be the way to go forward. But if someone says, I'm going to entrench the politics of victimhood to such an extent that every community within the Hindu fold is going to indulge in a race to the bottom in a mad grab for reservation, I don't think that person clearly has Bharat's best interests in his heart at all. In that sense, I would seriously suspect that somebody else is holding the strings, and perhaps the local actors are mere puppets.